There's a Wetherspoons in a market town in the north of England that is now, functionally, the last place you can sit down. Not the last pub, the last venue. The cafe closed. The library went to half days. The working men's club got converted to flats. So, on a Tuesday afternoon, the sticky floored spoons is doing the job of all of them. Pensioners nursing coffee, teenagers with nowhere else to be, a woman doing her CV on a laptop because the Wi-Fi still works. Walk the high street outside and you'll count 3 charity shops where a bank used to be, a post office that's now a vape shop, and a bus shelter with a timetable that stops at 6:47 p.m. These are the places where nothing dramatic has happened. No flood, no factory explosion, no single moment of collapse. Just a slow, quiet withdrawal of jobs, of services, of young people, of reasons to stay. 15 towns where people are leaving and not coming back. The most unsettling thing is how normal it all looks. Hartlepool is used to being the punchline, the monkey-hanging story, the Brexit vote, the forgotten Northeast. But the real story is stranger than the jokes. It's not dramatically failing. It's been quietly leaking people for 15 years while looking, from a distance, absolutely fine. The young adults did the rational thing and left. What remains skews older, faster than almost anywhere in England. GP surgeries at capacity despite a falling population. The docks closed and no employer filled the gap. Cheap housing attracts retirees who stabilise the headcount without rebuilding any labour economy. There's a marina, genuinely beautiful, that nobody actually moves to Hartlepool for. The adult child driving back from Newcastle every few weeks to check on ageing parents is the defining figure. Hartlepool isn't failing. It's being left behind while looking perfectly fine from the roads. Stoke-on-Trent has been voted one of the worst places to live in the UK more times than anyone in the tourism office would like. It also has one of the fastest rising property markets outside the south. Both things are completely true, and neither cancels the other out. The people arriving are investors and remote workers priced out of everywhere else. The people leaving are locals who grew up here and don't recognise their street anymore. What's actually happening is churn, a slow replacement carried out entirely through the housing market. Terraced houses flipped with grey paint and fake wood floors, coffee shops on streets that still have no supermarket, new residents who cannot tell you what the potter is made. Stoke is being gentrified by people who haven't noticed there was already something worth keeping. The irony of a place becoming too expensive for its own people while still appearing on every most deprived list is not unique to Stoke. It's becoming a formula. In Archwile, the seafront fairground is partly demolished, partly rusting, and partly, inexplicably, still open, all 3 states visible at once from the promenade. That image is RHYL, a place caught between what it was, what it became, and what nobody can agree it should be now. Built as a working-class holiday destination, the whole model was destroyed by cheap flights. The infrastructure stayed. Guest houses became HMOs. Low rents made it a destination of last resort for people from housing support elsewhere, concentrating vulnerability without any of the services it requires. The guest house owner, whose family ran the place for 3 generations, now rents rooms to the council at a fixed nightly rate because there are no tourists, and at least that is income. The beach is genuinely beautiful. The people who appreciate it most are the ones with nowhere else to go. Burnley has affordable housing, good transport links, and a real community. It still loses people every year. The answer is uncomfortable. It is a confidence problem as much as an economic one. Employers won't commit because the workforce is declining, and the workforce declines because employers won't commit. That loop has been running for 2 decades. Burnley FC is one of the most passionately supported clubs in England relative to the size of the town behind it. The football stays. The people drift. The 28-year-old who grew up here, went to university in Manchester, and cannot find a reason to return that outweighs the reasons to stay away and feels guilty about it, is not a cliché. They are the majority. Great Yarmouth's defining figure is not a resident. It's the second homeowner from Norwich or London, using the place 6 weekends a year, who has quietly removed housing stock from the long-term rental market for a community earning tourist economy wages. Streets of curtained windows in October. Food banks open year-round in a town that fills with visitors in summer. The care worker on £12.50 an hour, renting privately, on a social housing waiting list in a town where second home buyers have tightened supply, that person is bearing the real cost. Great Yarmouth is doing tourist economy labour while carrying residential economy costs. Blaenau Festiniog sits inside some of the most dramatic landscape in Wales, slate mountains, Victorian industrial heritage, a narrow-gauge railway, and it is one of the fastest shrinking communities in the UK. This is a Welsh language heartland. Every person who leaves is not just a resident leaving. They are a speaker leaving the exact place the language should be strongest. There are villages where holiday let signs outnumber children in the local school. That is not a metaphor. That is a planning register. Mansfield is the largest town in England without a railway station. 100,000 people live there, and there is no train. The lines were cut in the 1960s and never reinstated, so there is no commuter connectivity, no regeneration premium, and no easy arrival for investment. The town is bus dependent in an era of bus cuts. At what point does a government decide that a town of 100,000 people deserves a train? And at what point does the town stop waiting for the answer? The NHS worker driving 45 minutes each way because Mansfield cannot be reached any other way is the daily human cost of a decision nobody has revisited. Mansfield is not a failure. It is a deliberate choice made 60 years ago, still running. Port Talbot was the steelworks. That was the whole story, and everyone knew it. The steelworks is closing in stages, and the story is ending on a specific timeline the community has had to watch in real time. The orange glow that lit the sky at night is going. The pubs calibrated around shift patterns are closing. The 52-year-old with 30 years in, a mortgage, and a redundancy package that looks adequate until you price in 5 years of job searching in a regional economy with nothing equivalent, that person is the clearest version of a question the whole country is avoiding. Who pays for the transition? And do they get a choice? Bolton is technically inside the Greater Manchester success story. Manchester City is thriving in ways that are real and visible. Bolton is 12 miles northwest, thriving in the press release and struggling on the high street. Town centre vacancy rates are higher than anywhere comparable in the conurbation. Manchester overspill is arriving slowly, raising costs without raising wages or services. Bolton produces world-class talent at a remarkable rate for its size. It just cannot keep them. Bolton is what success looks like when it stops at the city limits. Skegness is bracing. The sign says so. It has said so for 140 years. At some point, bracing stops being an aspiration and starts being a warning. The working-class family with nowhere cheaper to go is the person this town exists for, and they keep coming, and the aging 1970s holiday infrastructure is still largely what they find. The people who love Skegness most are the ones being slowest squeezed out of being able to afford it. Grimsby was once the largest fishing port in the world. Not in England, in the world. Stand on the dock road and read it in the scale of the buildings relative to the number of people using them. The infrastructure of an enormous economy, maintained now by a much smaller one, has no new story to tell. The town that processes a huge share of the nation's fish cannot afford to feed itself well. Every place in this list has a version of that sentence. Something they were. Something that made them visible and economically legible. And a gap where the next sentence should be. These are not unusual towns. They are the majority experience of living in Britain outside London and a handful of other cities. What they share is not poverty or failure, it's invisibility. The version of Britain that gets covered, celebrated and invested in is not the version most people in this list inhabit. If any of that landed, the comments will tell you exactly where else it's happening. Somewhere right now, in one of these exact towns, someone is watching a removal van outside the house next door and thinking, that's the fourth one this year. And still, no one is counting.